Welcome to Economists in Times of Corona, in which we make video calls to some of the best economists that the Dutch has to offer, that the Netherlands has to offer. Today we are calling with Sarah Grace C. She's connected to the University of Groningen. And obviously, as you have noticed, I'm speaking in English, and that's because Sarah Grace is originally from the Philippines. Jasper Lucchese, you're
Hi.
the editor-in-chief, of ASB, who is organizing these video calls. Why did we invite Sarah Grace?
Because I hope she has an interesting story to share. So Sarah is into family economics. So she researches the division of labor in the family. And she researches also the mental issues and the pressure adolescents face. And both of these issues have been changed a lot recently. So people work from home, so they're much closer to one another. People take care of children themselves, do the chores themselves. Some people used to have help in the home, and they don't have that. And that must have an effect on the way they interact with one another, and that must have an effect on their mental health. And I hope Sarah can say something relevant to it.
Yeah, well, to start with, it does have an effect here. Sarah, hi, welcome in this series. You are working from home, aren't you? How are you coping?
Hi, yes, I'm working from home, I guess, just like everyone else. And coping, I would admit that it's still a work in progress. I worked a lot on this time diary data that has this record of what people do over a 24-hour cycle. So there you can also see how people spend their time, not just in terms of number of hours, but also in the how. So like, are there in chunks? Do people work at home, weekends? Who does what, etc.?
And then in general, what kind of picture do we get?
A lot of the mothers have this flexible work going on. So it's a matter of working in the evenings or a bit in the weekends, and single people do that as well. Whereas if you're in full-time standard employment, you tend to spend a big chunk of your day continuously at the office. So that is a pattern that you see in time diaries that you actually can't see in just capturing the number of work hours.
Okay. I would almost forget, but always I ask for Jasper what his backdrop is, because Jasper likes backdrops, and I'm sure he has something that's connected to the subject today. Jasper.
Yeah, so what you see behind me is a manufacturing facility where they make guns, and it's an older picture from the World War. And what is striking here is that you see women working there. And that was because the Second World War led to, and the First and the Second World War both led to a big shift in labor force participation of women. Men were at the front fighting, so women took over jobs domestically. And later on, many women who took over these jobs temporarily initially, like DID, stayed in their jobs, and this did wonders for the emancipation movement. Now I'm actually worried that we have the opposite effect at the moment, because people stay at home more often with their kids, and they might get accustomed to that, and women might take on a bigger part still of taking care of kids and doing chores and everything around the house. They might get accustomed to that like that, and we might be worse off in terms of emancipation after the corona crisis.
So are you actually saying that you are worried that women like being at home and will end up staying at home more often?
Well, people tend to like what they do a lot, usually. So if you do something a lot, people tend to rationalize it and for themselves that this is what it is and I'm good at this, and well, so maybe not actively like it, but on the margin, I would expect an effect that is detrimental to emancipation.
So it's a bit difficult to say you can have both actually, and it's a bit difficult to say at this point because people are still figuring out, I think. I mean, it's well, it feels like forever, but it's basically 2 months since everything happened, and people are still figuring out. So it's, I'm not discounting the traditional, you know, like women would prefer to stay home, but in the end, I mean, if we think about it, that's flexible work, right? And flexible work arrangements were originally introduced to help parents, well, to help people balance work and family life. So now everyone's doing flexible work, and maybe it's you know, like it's a policy that is for everyone to maybe balance work and family life instead of being so focused on work, and you know, being all stressed out, overstressed, and then you have a society with poor poor well-being. So maybe flexible work in this sense is beneficial.
Yeah, so are you saying maybe we will end up liking flexible work more, and then that could mean that men like it more and end up working less? Or am I mixing everything up now?
Maybe that can be a future, you know, like if especially if there's the technology, introduction of technology, maybe work from home will be the new norm. Why not? And maybe it won't be so bad, you know,
Yeah.
like I guess you can think of it in both a micro and a macro level, right? So at the micro level, you have a bargaining problem going on between the husband and the wife. So division of labor, you can see that, like what Jasper said, the the specialization, who is good at what and who likes doing what, in the end, that's that thing. But at the same time, I think that there are also a lot of women who have fought over some stereotypes. Is there, so it's there's this traditional male breadwinner, female house
Caretaker.
home, yes, homemaker model. But at the same time, you also see more egalitarian families where you have this division of labor, between division of household labor between the husband and the wife. But I think that it's largely driven by education of the parents, but also the social norms, so beliefs. So um it's difficult to tell really. Okay, obviously you have a society that is predominantly traditional or predominantly egalitarian, but in the end, if we're talking about within family, it's really micro thing that it's bargaining between the husband and the wife. But apart from the within family, you also have, I mean, if you go zoom out a bit, you have different kinds of families. So here you have two-parent households, but society is also composed of single-parent households. And in that case, there's no bargaining, but you have the mother, or, well, mostly the single mothers, because kids tend to stay with the mothers, but you have single parents who have to devote all their resources into practically everything. And then in that case, you have the kids actually of single parent households who have to share the burden with the mother. So the bargaining there is not between the house, between the parent, between the husband and wife, but the child, especially if it's a more it's older children who take in the role of the partner for the parent.
And are you saying that that always happens, and that is maybe even more so now in these times of Corona?
Probably more so now because you have everyone is constrained, so it's the effects are kind of emphasized. So these single parent households are more common among the low educated and low income. And when Corona happened, what are the sectors that have been affected by this loss of job? It's the low skilled, and the people who are affected are the low educated. So in this sense, from a macro perspective, you have effects on different households.
Yeah.
And the questions, the problems are kind of different as well.
Say you want the best education because kids are not going to school. So right now the aim of the government could be to give them as good as education as possible, and maybe you want to facilitate a little bit on that. Or maybe when they go back to school or whatever. Is there something we could say about that?
So I would go with households with low education and low income backgrounds, regardless of the household structure. Because I mean, you can also see this among the students. I mean, if you look at the internet, or I mean people around, you see people are behaving differently. Students, you have, I mean, I see my colleagues who give their kids a structured day. They give their kids a homeschooling structure, whereas I see some others who are basically just binging on Netflix. So in some way, this Corona provides different settings for different groups,
Yep.
basically. So if it's about education, I guess it's supporting those who cannot provide the structure that the institutions are not able to provide at this period.
Jasper, I think
You have
yeah?
some, sorry.
Go ahead.
You have some other interesting research about adolescents where you state that, if I'm not mistaken, the adolescents with parents with a higher education level and a higher income, and in some circumstances do worse because their parents put too much pressure on them. And you say these circumstances, now that everybody's at home, are those circumstances?
Yes, actually, it's a puzzle, right? Because you would expect, I mean, there's also, so this thesis of my student actually has investigated two mechanisms. One is about performing well. So this you find among high educated adolescents. And among those low performing adolescents, it's actually the financial cost. So they have student loans, and they are working students. So you have two subgroups of adolescents who have probably similar outcomes, but the mechanisms working are not the same.
Yeah. Okay, I see. Jasper.
Yes,
No?
I'm listening.
Yeah. Oh, I thought.
I was listening. I was thinking about these mechanisms.
Yeah.
And I think the focus on adolescence is because things for them have become more uncertain. I mean, they should make a choice about what type of adult they want to become, what type of life they want to live, what type of job they want to take, and then everything all of a sudden becomes uncertain. Whereas, let's say, for us, we have chosen a path in our lives. We can, of course, change to some extent, but we don't have to worry about that anymore. So the uncertainty is less. Is that a good summary of why it matters for adolescents more than for, let's say, adults?
I guess the difference is as adults, we've already learned somehow, whereas in adolescence, the teenagers are still learning from being a child where there was the parents, home environment, and the school providing the structure, to being on their own. So economic decision makers by deciding for themselves. So if I'm an adolescent, I grew up in a home environment that provided me a good structure. You kind of form a habit. So when disaster happens, you kind of know, okay, this is what works for me. I have to provide a structure for myself. I've had this habit of doing certain activities, sports, reading, etc., that have helped me cope through life. This is what I will do to cope again with life. Whereas if you have an adolescent who did not have a structure, with this, like relying without a good habit from childhood, as adolescents, you lose that habit, and you are left with, okay, without school, without structure, without university, without my teacher telling me do this, do this, do this, I'm lost. What do I do? Oh, I spend my time watching Netflix, or I go out drinking. So and there's evidence that when you have this loss of parental supervision or the structure, like latchkey children, they tend to engage in health risk behaviors more. So binge drinking, cigarette smoking during adolescence, and there are consequences to their to other outcomes.
Okay. Jasper, I'm trying to figure out for myself what I'm taking home from this. Well, the structure point is very clear. It's very important. I think it's mostly parents that can provide it now. I don't think there's a lot for policymakers they can add right now, but correct me if I'm wrong. And Jasper's fear that women might like it so much at home that they will end up working less. I didn't hear any of that. Jasper?
No, I didn't hear Sarah say that.
No?
No.
So the women and emancipation, women empowerment. No, I mean, it's again, I think that it's at this point with homeschooling and everyone's lockdown, I think that the home environment, the parents would provide very good role models. So it's and it ties back to the division of household labor, right? So if you want a daughter who is with this girl power, and who will eventually end up as with women empowerment, but both parents should provide a role model with this division of labor. It's not just about homeschooling, teaching your children, okay, this is math, this is science, etc., but also providing a good home environment where you have the father and the mother dividing the chores, dividing work hours equally.
Yeah.
Because
okay, Sarah, our last question is always, who should we call? Who do you think we should talk to in this series?
Okay. I haven't been in the Netherlands that long, so I don't really know a lot of people, but I would be curious to ask Tine de Moor. I think she's affiliated with Utrecht, and she does economic history. So given Jasper's introduction with, like a female role in the labor market, girl power and girl power and women empowerment, I would like to ask her if there is something from the history that we can learn from to get through this phase. Because I think that there's a lot of things that we can learn from history and take things that good things and not repeat the mistakes, let's say.
I think that's a good suggestion. I think I saw Jasper writing it down. Correct, Jasper? I'm going to say thank you so much. Thank you, Jasper, Lucase from ASB. Thank you so much, Sarah C. Thank you for viewing this, and I hope to see you all soon again. Bye, Jasper.
Bye.
Bye, Sarah.
Bye.